And tonight on the Daily Wrap, as we look back and honor those lost on 9/11 14 years ago, we have disturbing news now that the Obama administration might have altered intelligence data on ISIS. The Obama administration won the first round over the Iran deal, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the battle is far from over. And Governor Bobby Jindal wages war on Donald Trump as Hillary Clinton's once colossal lead is all but gone. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my like-to-tie co-host, Rick Unger.
Oh, yeah, we are. It looks like our moms dressed us together today.
We've done about 100 shows, and this has never happened.
I know. Well, let's end it right here. This is unacceptable.
Yeah, I agree completely. Big report out today. Your
thoughts?
Yeah,
disturbing.
Quickly.
Very disturbed by it. And from credible sources that the intelligence community has been, or the top guys in the intelligence community, have been setting up a situation where we may not be getting honest reporting or honest intelligence on ISIL's, let's say, strength. Mm-hmm. This troubles me deeply. This brings me back to the Vietnam War, when we were being lied to about what was happening over there. This is not something that I take lightly.
Trusting government already poor, about to get worse if this report is accurate. Too, Mr. Unger's right. She's an anchor for the Blaze TV. Amy Holmes is back. Glasses, love him. And finally, he's a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL, and currently the president of Continued Services, and has tremendous handwriting, by the way. Yes, and he has the Clinton emails.
With you? You brought them all? Yeah.
Interesting. Serving it up tonight is Jonathan Gilliam. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. And that was the President and First Lady today at the White House observing a moment of silence for the victims of the terror attack of 9/11/2001. 14 years ago today, the world was shocked as Al-Qaeda staged the biggest terror attack in history on American soil, killing 2,977 people. On that day, the official war on terror began.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Arguably the best moment of the Bush presidency. 14 years later, the war in Iraq is over and Osama bin Laden has been killed by Navy SEALs. But the war rages on. Jonathan Gilliam, Al-Qaeda, marginalized, but filling the vacuum, particularly obviously with the caliphate in Syria and Iraq, is ISIS. Are we winning the war on terror? Are we safer than we were 14 years ago?
Let's just stop using the word war on terror, or the phrase, and start using the phrase war on fundamental Islam, because that's what it is, and no, we're not winning it. I mean, we should have been prepared for this. That is perhaps, I think, next to when Ronald Reagan told Gorbachev to tear down that wall, I think that's one of the greatest moments in presidential history right there that you just showed. But we should have been prepared before this happened. It was no secret that fundamental Islam was moving, that they hate us, and I don't think that we've come far at all since then. In fact, we may have gone back a few steps because now they know how to use technology. They've had 14 years to raise an entire generation to fight us. Now they're going global to the point where Germany and all these other European countries are giving them free tickets to spread all over the world.
Would you say, though, that you're surprised that for 14 years there hasn't been a major terror attack? I know what happened in Boston. I know what happened in Fort Hood. I can't classify them in the same level as 9/11 as a major attack. Are you surprised we haven't been hit harder?
Let's look at what happened in Tennessee, right? Our own Defense Department that was struck. That was a terrorist attack inside our borders on our own military, and they killed. Was it four people? Four, you know, 3 Marines and 1 sailor. I think that was almost as significant as killing over 2,000 Americans, because what happened? Because they went in and they killed and they hit our military here during wartime, and we were clueless.
You see, it was a lone wolf.
He subscribes to fundamental Islam. You cannot differentiate. In the word lone wolf, the reality is he's a lone operative. He is an operative. You don't have to go to boot camp to become a fundamental Muslim.
No, you just have to get a Twitter account.
You have to subscribe to their ideology.
I'm gonna disagree a bit with that. You know, what happened in Tennessee was terrible, to be sure. But answering your question, Joe, I'm actually amazed that both the Bush administration and then the Obama administration have been successful at keeping something as horrible as 9/11 from happening again. You know, we tend to be, you know, if you're a Democrat, you beat up on Bush. You know what? I'm not beating up on George Bush over this. No matter what you may think about what led to this, and however you may want to blame him, which I don't, he did a heck of a job in keeping it from happening again. And the same in this administration. Americans should appreciate that. There's nothing wrong with appreciating. I agree with Jonathan, by the way. We have not made the advances against Muslim fundamentalism or terrorism, whatever you want to call it. I agree with you.
And in point of fact, ISIS is gaining ground, territory, resources, you know, arms. They are abducting, raping, killing girls, children, boys, dumping live boys into ditches. And I think, you know, to your point, that we have to look at this as a paradigm shift in terms of their strategy for inflicting and instilling terror. So now we have videos of beheadings that are being broadcast all around the world, and I think it does frighten Americans. But Rick, when it comes to terrorist attacks on American soil, yes, of course, we credit our intelligence services for foiling many, many plots, but some, it's been just dumb luck. The underwear bomber, for example.
It could be. You never know how.
It didn't work, and he singed himself, and he was tackled.
Better to be lucky than good.
But he landed on American soil, and had his terror plot succeeded, all those people would have been killed.
The bottom line is, to both of those presidents, I say we don't give them enough credit.
Rick, remember that the underwear bomber's own father turned him into the embassy and said, "My kid's going off the rails. He is a danger to himself and everyone around him," and he still was able to get on a flight and land in the United States.
And I suspect that's not the only time something has gone wrong. But look about how well they've done.
And we were also warned about the Boston bombers. Russian intelligence services informed the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and they were still able to make it here and set off bombs and kill people.
But Jonathan, how hard is it to be perfect? Because I think that's what Amy's alluding to, that, you know, we could have stopped this and we could have stopped that. But all these perfection is just so difficult, particularly when you're dealing with lone wolves.
All these attacks, what we're talking about are symptoms of 2 huge cancers in this world. One is fundamental Islam that's spreading all over the place, and inside our own country, the greatest cancer we have are incompetent and ineffective leaders. And these people that you were speaking about at the beginning of this show that have changed these data reports about ISIS, we're talking about executives that are at the top of all these federal agencies, that are advisors for the president, that sit in cabinets, in Congress, in the Senate. These people are incompetent. They do not realize what they're doing. They compromise the safety of the United States in order.
It's easy to say when you're not one of the people with the responsibility.
I've worked for them.
I don't care.
I've worked for them.
You're not one of the people with the you're not one of the people with the responsibility, and I'm telling you,
responsibility for informing. I did.
Things will go wrong, but we overdo it for political reasons. President Bush kept this from happening after 9/11. President Obama.
I worked for these people.
Can I interject for a moment?
So?
The Boston bombers, named, identified, and our government was told.
We missed them.
The underwear bomber, identified, we were told. And when it comes to the incompetence, do you remember James Clapper sitting in the interview with Diane Sawyer? And there had been a roundup of 12 terrorists who were planning a holiday terrorist attack. And Diane Sawyer asked James Clapper, "So is London safe?" And he looked at her baffled and he said, "London?" He didn't even know that these terrorists had been apprehended, while all of the rest of the world did because they watched the news.
Incompetent.
Well, President Obama called them, has picked up the slack. So look, here's the bottom line. More Daily Wrap coming in just a moment.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. The Daily Beast is reporting that intelligence data on ISIS was cooked to make it appear as though the Islamic State was actually weaker than analysts at Central Command reported. The reason for changing the data? To fit the narrative the White House was communicating to America. President Obama's intelligence chief, James Clapper, is alleged to be behind this. Amy, the White House has painted a pretty positive picture of how we're doing against ISIS, and now we think we have some reason to question whether or not this data that we're being fed is accurate.
Right, and I think it's disgraceful, obviously. We don't know if it's James Clapper that's manipulating this to try to paint a rosy picture for his boss, President Obama, or if it's coming from President Obama to James Clapper. But in the last segment, I pointed out, there was that famous interview with Diane Sawyer when what James Clapper didn't know, and it's his job to know, the 12 terror suspects that had been arrested in London, and that was the headline of the day. That's what we all woke up to. And if you remember in 2011, Mr. Clapper giving testimony on Capitol Hill and describing the Muslim Brotherhood as a secular organization, and it's named Muslim Brotherhood. Well, so the question is James Clapper really that dense, or is he just playing stupid?
The way it's being reported, and again, I can't sit here and vouch for the truth one way or another, but the way it's being reported is that what Clapper is doing is not telling these senior officers to lie, but telling them without implicitly telling them. Yes, exactly. Telling them his analysis, and then they bring it back. Joe, you and I are probably the only ones old enough on the panel to remember much about Vietnam.
How you like that, Joe?
I included you. Huh?
That's unfair. She was born in the 80s. And John, I believe, was born when Reagan was inaugurated.
Apparently you're elderly now.
So here's my question to you. You will probably remember, I think you will, I don't know, I know I do, when William Westmoreland, our general running the Vietnam War, we found out that he had been lying to the administration about all sorts of things. And I remember how angry I was about that. As a result of that, I'm going to be just as angry if I find out that the Obama administration is a part of this, or if anybody, even if it's below the president, is a part of doing this. This is not okay. You have to tell the American people the truth.
The question is, are we surprised? Because
I'd be surprised.
We've seen this movie before. We've literally seen this movie before with Benghazi and the YouTube video that was blamed. Right?
I don't think it's fair to put Benghazi into this, because I think it's a very different situation where
they blamed a video that had nothing to do with that attack.
I understand that.
But the question is, inside the administration, did they blame the video?
Yeah.
Right, but the point is that it's the same theme, right? That, hey, Al-Qaeda is decimated, and see, they're shrinking, and we're winning the war on terror. This is just another example of politicizing something that these intelligence pros, 50 of them, came forward and said, this ain't right, and we're not playing this game anymore.
Well,
so,
yes, Jonathan,
it's disgraceful, as you said.
I think what's at work here is that there are too many senior officers who realize if they play along, they're going to get promoted. And if they don't play along, in fact, it was reported that a couple of them who didn't want to play along were suggested to retire.
Right.
Now, this is not healthy.
Well, no, you just nailed it right there. The ones that play along have a great retirement and often have several benefits once they get out as far as connections go. But listen, here's the reality. Let me say this to the American people that are looking in this camera right here. If I go and tranquilize a lion, and then I go and I give it a massage, and you watch it on TV, and I say, hey, lions are great. You look how peaceful and nice that they are. You don't have to worry about it. As soon as I walk away from that lion and that tranquilizer wears off, and you go try and massage a lion, guess what? You're going to die. That is the same thing that's happening here.
So the question I have to ask, what is the upside, Amy? What is in it for the administration, or if again, we have no way of knowing at this point if this is something the president and his key people know about or don't know about.
Right, we don't know the causality.
We don't know yet, right. But the question is, what's in it? I can understand what's in it for a senior officer. We just said, they get treated better because they're going along with the game. I'm not quite sure what's in it for James Clapper. I really don't. He's not fighting this war. He could give honest information. What could be in it for the administration to tell us this when it's not true?
At that level, of the military advising the White House, you're dealing with politicians, and that's how you get to those positions. But what's in it for the administration is very simple: complacency. It means that President Obama does not have to react forcefully and effectively to try to contain and defeat
take us
ISIS.
into another war.
And remember that President Obama very famously said that he looked at ISIS and he thinks of them as a JV team, and just because you put on the basketball uniform, it doesn't make you a pro.
But you're right, but we would probably agree he doesn't see it that way anymore.
That he doesn't see ISIS that way?
Well, as
that
the JV.
may be. Well, that may be, but what is the action? What are the results? Right. He may have changed his view of ISIS, but he hasn't changed his approach.
Joe, what do you think about, I look back at this, and as you know, I'm pretty hawkish when it comes to ISIL.
You really are.
I really am. I think these are evil people that need to be taken care of. I always say the United States is at its absolute best when we are confronting true evil in the world. Sometimes we confront things that are maybe evil, maybe not. There's no question about ISIL. These are some evil, I'm not going to use the words I'd like to be using, right? So, Joe, what I do think about, though, is if we made the mistake that I think we made in going into Iraq, look at the impact this is having. The American people don't seem to want to have anything to do with war. And the administration seems to be just going along with them, and that's not leadership. If we need to be going after these people.
I think the American people, though, would be on board with a war against ISIS. Based on the horrific images that we've seen, the things that you've mentioned before, the beheadings of Christians, the fact that they're taking over large masses of land, they see this as another Nazi Germany marching through, and I think they would support it in this case because the evidence is so clear of how evil the enemy is.
We don't see that in the polls. I'd like to think that you're right, but we don't seem to see it.
If you don't stop the battles, you'll never end the war.
And the battles will get worse.
Yes.
I agree with that. Are you surprised to learn that intelligence data was altered? I know that I'm going to be very surprised to learn this. If you are, go to newsmaxtv.com/comments to let us know. Maybe we'll even read your comments on the air, as you know we do every night. Coming up, Bobby Jindal wages war on Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is for Donald Trump. He believes in nothing other than himself. Look, he's not a liberal, he's not a moderate, he's not a conservative, he's not a Democrat, he's not a Republican, he's not an independent. Donald Trump is for Donald Trump. He's not for anything, he's not against anything. Issues don't mean anything to him. Policies, ideals are not important to him. He is for Donald. Donald Trump is a narcissist and he's an egomaniac.
And that was Republican presidential candidate, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, he said, at the National Press Club yesterday. Those comments ignited, yes, a Twitter war between Jindal and Donald Trump. Trump tweeting, Bobby Jindal did not make the debate stage, and therefore I have never met him. To which Jindal responded, we have met. You wrote a check. A fool and his money are soon parted. A fool and his dad's money are parted sooner. Which, of course, Mr. Trump responded, I only respond to people that register more than 1% in the polls. Ouch. I never thought he had a chance, and I've been proven right. Well, not to be left out of the fun, Senator Rand Paul had this to say about Trump supporters and the man himself.
But what people haven't quite come to grips with yet, and they don't know yet about Donald Trump, is that he's not a conservative. That he believes in using the government, the bully force of government, to take property from a small property owner and give it to a big business like himself. That he has been for a single-payer health care system like Obamacare. That he's been for abortion before he was against it. I don't believe that he's a conservative, but I really have no idea what he believes in because he's been on both sides of every issue. As an adult, most of his adult life, he's been a progressive Democrat.
Okay, Amy, coming to you first. Are you surprised that these are presidential candidates, people who want to be leaders of the free world, and yet they're acting like sophomores in high school?
Are you talking about Donald Trump and his remarks about Carly Fiorina?
No, I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about Jindal.
Listen,
I'm talking about Paul. At first I was entertained.
It's the first time we've talked about Jindal. What a coincidence.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
Look, politics ain't beanbag, and politicians have been slinging mud for as long as there's been an American.
It like this.
Oh my goodness! I mean, if you look at newspapers from the 1800s and the cartoons that they were drawing, I mean, give me a break. But to your point about Bobby Jindal, he's using this to get himself back in the news, to get people talking about him again. You were saying during the break you don't think it's going to work. I agree with you because look who's tried it: Rick Perry, Rand Paul. And like none of this is working. And if you look at polling data, the #1 attribute that Trump supporters say they like about him is that he's tough. Not his ideology, not his consistency, it's his personality they're drawn to.
Sun Tzu says every war is won before it is ever fought.
Well, that's true.
And in this case, exactly to your point, you go after Trump, he specializes in being obnoxious in his retorts, and they're effective and they're funny. We were all laughing. You cannot win this war, and I understand that Jindal is below 1% and he has to do something,
right.
But this is going to backfire. We know this.
But you know, since I often use you as my psychiatrist,
and you made me 50 years old before.
Yeah, well, you know, I have to say this to you. My feelings are deeply, deeply hurt. Because you will recall a few weeks back there were a few commenters who complained that I had said something that I thought was funny about Donald Trump's hair. And they wrote in very angry at me, and I apologized and said I'd never do it again, which I haven't. And do you know, I'm waiting for those commenters to write back in and say, you know what, if you're making fun of Donald Trump's hair and I'm giving you a hard time, maybe I should say something about him making fun of a woman's face. And yet those emails haven't come yet. Folks, I'm waiting for you. You must be annoyed by that if you were so annoyed by my saying something funny about his hair.
Speaking of hair, Gilliam, since yours is
growing.
Tremendous. Yeah. Well done. The comments about Fiorina, since we haven't been able to talk to you about this, completely uncalled for. Right? To bring in a woman's face into a national debate on something, saying, can we look at that for the next 4 or 8 years? Yet, we came to the agreement, I want to see you will as well, this will have no effect on his poll numbers whatsoever, and especially amongst women, where he's actually doing better and better. Do people just like the fact that he's being candid, and maybe this is the way people speak at home, and they're saying the same thing about Fiorina?
I don't know anybody who
I think that's part. I think that's
actually.
I think that's a big part of it.
I don't know people who talk like this.
With every
look
living
at that
room,
person's face. Look at
There's 350 million people in this country, and a lot of them, you know, when they have a couple beers, they do talk like this.
Yes.
But here's the reality that I'm actually seeing is that a lot of females that want somebody to talk to females and treat females like they would treat anybody else, they didn't take offense to that. You know, they didn't take offense to it at all. They're like, hey, he's treating her like he treated everybody else. And I think that was something that resonated with a lot of people.
In an ugly and despicable
Shame
way.
on them if that's how they feel about it.
But you know what's interesting?
We raise our kids to not speak that way.
One more point about this.
Quickly.
Donald Trump, he's supposed to be, you know, so strong in his ministry. He's trying to backpedal on all of this.
Yeah, he is.
Right?
As he should, yeah, because he knows in this one, he says it was her persona.
Right.
They were talking
he's supposed
about.
to be a straight
So he
talker.
doesn't
about
have this real courage.
So what do
No,
you think
he does
about the
not.
Twitter war between Bobby Jindal and Donald Trump? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. And be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation, absolutely free. All you have to do is cover the shipping cost of $4.95. Call 1-800-655-7567, 800-655-7567, or visit newsmax.com/Ben. Up next, we have the latest on the Iran deal. Stay tuned.
And that was former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton learning the nay-nay on Ellen earlier this week, the nay-nay. But has the time arrived to project that Hillary Clinton's status as the Democratic frontrunner may be coming to an end? While such a projection might be premature, it is to be noted that her lead over Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has now shrunk to just 10 points. According to the latest CNN ORC poll, Mrs. Clinton's support among Democrats is down to just 37%, 10 points lower than the August poll, while Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has 27% support, and Vice President Joe Biden, who has not yet joined the race, has 20%. In addition to the Clinton decline against her own primary candidates, she has now lost the advantage she once held in general election matchups, according to the same CNN ORC poll. In head-to-head matchups, Hillary Clinton now trails former neurosurgeon Ben Carson by 5 points, while roughly even with former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. Of course, it remains very early in the process, but guys, this can't be good news for the Clinton campaign. Jonathan, how does this turn out? I mean,
look, can I just ask, and I'd love to hear people what they think about this that are liberal or Democrats. You know, the only thing that is worse than a criminal that is running for office is a socialist that's running for office, and they're torn between who they're going to vote for, a criminal or a socialist. Listen,
You take socialist over criminal, huh?
no,
Really?
I said, well, is that what I just said?
Yeah.
So, actually, I take that back. I think the criminal is worse. If I said that, what I meant was a criminal could probably still be competent and lead a country, whereas a socialist would come out and potentially destroy
The
everything that
criminal
we have
might
in this country.
Be in jail, which would complicate matters. I think yeah, I actually think the poll here that is really startling is Ben Carson so handily beating Hillary Clinton in a head-to-head matchup.
That's what I thought was interesting. More than Trump.
More than Trump. But Ben Carson is not exactly a household name. I mean, I know he is with Newsmax viewers and with all of us here at the table, but that voters would be asked, you look at this list of names and they pick out Ben Carson. Hillary Clinton has been a public figure for, what, going on 30, 40 years now?
Yeah, because maybe Ben Carson isn't doing what we talked about in the last segment, and that is attacking people, being obnoxious, attacking women, and they see him as an outsider, just like Trump, right? But without all the baggage that comes along with Trump, and they like the fact that he is, like Trump, like Sanders, a very authentic, soft-spoken person.
Surprised they even know who he is? To tell a pollster, I'll pick him?
I'm a little bit surprised by that. Yeah, he's certainly not the name. To answer your question,
they actually know him better than we might think. That's right.
I can't see this reversing. I can't see her continuing not to go down. She's dropped 20 points in 2 months. She can't rebrand herself. We all know who she is. To Amy's point,
she was doing the nay-nay, Joe.
She was doing the nay-nay, which looks just so horribly awkward when she tries to do that. On the week where she said she'd have more
nay on the nay-nay.
On the week where she said she'd be more personable, by the way, and announced it to the world, and then does it. It's just the worst campaign I've ever seen.
But Rick, let me ask you this though. Isn't there other people that the Democrats can look towards? Well, I mean, is it really?
Some of us are looking towards the vice president, but we don't know if he's going to
Joe Biden has been in Senate for 30 years, and Senate and Congress have destroyed this country. Why would you want somebody who's a part of those losing teams?
You get the last word. I'm moving on. Well, the second GOP primary debate will take place on CNN next week, and we now know who's made the cut and who is not. There will still be 2 debates, but the rules for qualifying did change from the first Fox News debate, with eligibility for the so-called adults table, I call it the grown-ups table, and kids table, based on an average of 14 different polls and interviews conducted over the past 2 months. Making the 8 p.m. main event are Donald Trump, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Mike Huckabee, Rand Paul, John Kasich, Chris Christie, and Carly Fiorina, whose polling numbers surged after the last debate in the 6 p.m. debates are not too many. Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal, George Pataki, and, of course, Lindsey Graham.
We're going to miss that Jim Gilmore.
Did you
notice they expanded the number to 11 in the main poll so Carly Fiorina would make it?
Why even have that other thing? Why even have that other debate, though? Why even have that?
Well, they're candidates. They filed. They have a right. I don't know why we're doing it the way we're doing it. I don't think it should be divided this way. I think you should mix them all up,
in a cage, lots, and let them fight it out.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Fiorina absolutely should have been on that stage. What CNN was doing was taking polling going all the way back to July. Then they got so much blowback, and they said, you got to take more recent polls. And Fiorina clearly is in the top 10, top 5 in some instances. She will make this infinitely more entertaining, and she'll be the one who will effectively go after Donald Trump. Get your popcorn ready, Ricky.
You get the last word. Let us know what you think of Hillary's vanishing advantage and the GOP primary debate lineup by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. And we do want to know who your pick is for the 2016 nomination. Go to newsmaxpolls.com to cast your vote. Coming up next, viewer comments.
And welcome to the show. Before we get back to your comments, do college kids know why 9/11 happened? Remember, they were 4, 5, 6 years old at the time. Well, according to this Young America's Foundation video, the answer is a resounding nuh-uh.
Why did they attack us on 9/11?
If I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure.
Probably Bush did something bad.
I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
They were mad at us for something. I don't know.
I'm not really sure.
I have no idea why that day in particular, actually.
I err towards our interventionist foreign policy.
Just to destroy the economy and
stuff like that.
Either it was an issue over money or oil.
He put us into war over there over money and gas, and it just didn't turn out right.
I hear a lot about it being religious, but I think that that's covering up economics.
They weren't happy with us, I mean with the U.S. being in their area. Oh, it was because the U.S. was in their area. Yeah. Yes.
I quote Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I weep for the future. Yeah. Well, apparently 9/11 happened because we lost a bet to a bookie on the World Cup, is basically what I ascertained from that.
Apparently didn't pay up.
Yeah.
And
Does that
we
disturb
were
you?
in the area of New York and Washington, D.C.
Right. So let me play devil's advocate, as I said, to introduce that. They were only 4, 5, 6 years old at the time, but you would think at some point that you would kind of understand.
Like somebody asked
what
you
happened.
what was Pearl Harbor,
right?
And you
Perfect
say, well, that's where they went diving in the water to collect pearls for a necklace.
Something like that.
I mean,
right?
those teachers at that school, whatever that school is, must be so proud.
What does this say to our education system? Where are we even teaching anything about 9/11 in our curriculum, in high schools, in college? I don't think we are. I think we're still doing Revolutionary War and Bunker Hill.
They're not teaching it?
I don't think they are.
I don't know.
That was
I don't
George
know.
Mason.
I can't.
That was George Mason University, by the way.
How much money?
Virginia.
How much money do they pay to go to school there?
That was the university. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Northern
in our
Virginia.
nation's capital,
Pretty
where
good.
many of these students are hoping to get internships on Capitol Hill and serve in government and in think tanks or non-think tanks in their case. But you know, I don't know like the answer to the universal question of American education system. This was a sample of students who answered these questions poorly, obviously. I would also ask, presumably they have parents. Do they never discuss this at the dinner table?
Their parents are the ones you see Jay Leno interviewing who don't know who the Vice President of the United States are.
Right. Hard-working parents who
So
are
yeah,
setting their
actually
children to-
our producer just said in our ear, and he's right, they're blaming the United States for it.
And our interventionist policy, and despite the fact that fundamental Islam is thriving and has been for 1,400 years to take over the globe, I mean, forget that part. It was our interventionist policy, as the one person put it, or because of economics. People have to get, this is unbelievable that in 14 years that these people have not figured out on their own that somebody wants to kill us for reasons that doesn't matter what we do.
And apparently these aspiring scholars have never had the discussion in 14 years of what was 9/11 about anyway? You know,
how'd they get to college without knowing
Where's
that?
their intellectual
Because
curiosity?
it's not asked in any. It's probably not asked in any test. It's
Well,
not asked
although I
in the
do have to
SATs,
say
it's not asked in the history
there was
class.
data out yesterday that 90-some% of college of kids in California aren't prepared for college.
That's correct. And Jimmy Kimmel, you brought up Jay Leno. Jimmy Kimmel actually went on the street last week and just asked people, can you name one congressman? Just one. And an overwhelming majority, they said after the fact, couldn't even name one.
But even in
Paul
their
Ryan, boom.
Right. But even in their Blame America answers, or it had something to do with oil and money, even that wasn't clever or thought out or in any way fleshed out. Clearly this is not something they've given any thought to.
That's why I believe 2 years mandatory service in the military when you graduate high school.
Or maybe just a civics class in high school where you learn something.
Yeah, no more home ec. A little bit more 9/11. Anyway, we have some comments on Donald Trump. First up, here's one from Alice who says, Trump needs to watch what he says for sure, but this will not prevent me from voting for Trump. There you go. Here is the only one who could beat Hillary, not true, and Trump is hope for our country, according to that poll. Apparently, Jeb Bush and Ben Carson can as well.
Too.
Take over.
Kenneth seems to disagree. He says Donald Trump is showing how stupid he is. He's losing his mind. And you know, we might be offended about his using the word stupid, except Trump always uses the word stupid. So.
Right. Let's read one more. Angelo says, Donald Trump's comments about Carly Fiorina's face are totally unacceptable and childish. What troubles me more than his schoolyard bully tactics is the fact that Americans seem to embrace such behavior. God help us all. I wonder how much this has to do with reality TV and people insulting each other all the time. It's part of our culture now. It's our fabric.
Is a reality TV show.
It completely is.
So far.
And it rates really well, and apparently we're entertained by it, but I wonder when things are going to really start getting serious as far as the dialogue. Anyway, remember, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues that we talk about here on the show, be sure to go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know what you think. And be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is cover that pesky shipping charge of $4.95. Call 1-800-655-7567. That's 1-800-655-7567, or visit newsmax.com/Ben. Okay, well, it's Friday. It's happy time. It must be time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's time for an NFL edition of Yay or Nay. First up, as you all know, today marks the 14th anniversary of 9/11. And for the past 10 years, MSNBC has decided to play raw broadcast footage from NBC's Today Show from September 11th, 2001. Many have questioned the motives behind the decision to re-air that broadcast. Some have even called it death porn. Yes, the footage serves as a record of a powerful historical event and a group of journalists doing their best to provide calm and understanding in a time of turmoil and chaos. But on the other hand, are the events of that day still too real to too many people? Yay or nay, Unger?
Tough call. I will admit to you that I tend to watch it when it's on. I watched a sizable amount of it this morning.
I did as well.
It makes you remember. But yeah, you know, anything that happens with all of this, you always have to stop and think about the people who were truly harmed on that day, the wives, the children, the relatives of people who died. And hopefully it does not upset them.
I'd go to Amy Holmes next, but unfortunately she had to run. Happy hour means happy hour starts at 5 o'clock, so apparently, or 6 o'clock, so 7 o'clock, so that's that. Depends on where you are in the country. Anyway, would you play it again, or do you think MSNBC is trying to exploit the events of 9/11?
Well, I'm sure they're trying to exploit it to some extent because it does get ratings when people tune in. Obviously, George Mason University students are not tuning in.
Yeah.
And but here's the other thing that I think they need to think about is this is a recurring trophy every year for Islamic fundamentalists. They need to kind of maybe think about that a little bit, but it is kind of a wake up and a reminder, for everybody, I think, every year.
Yeah, I'm torn on it, but I eventually got to a yay. I did watch it like you did today, and you forget so many things that were going on, the fine details. And from a journalism perspective, a media perspective, it was fascinating to see the way the folks at Today's Show handled it. There was Brokaw and Couric and a lot of people that aren't even there anymore, right. People on the ground, and all the reports now that you hear about bombs going off in the World Trade Center, when that obviously clearly didn't happen, but just the confusion.
Yeah.
It's educational, I think, and that's what I came down on. Anyway, let's move to something a bit lighter. CNN president, his name is Jeff Zucker. He has told his producers and talent to cover Donald Trump until viewers stop tuning in. But apparently his staff has had enough, according to Jordan Charlton, a friend of mine at The Wrap. Producers have complained about excessive coverage, especially a decision to bump a Hurricane Katrina special from Anderson Cooper in favor of an hour-long post-Trump rally special with Don Lemon. In response to the outrage, Mr. Zucker has simply said, quote, "We are not perfect," unquote. With CNN hosting the next GOP debate, the Trump coverage is not going to die down anytime soon, but do staffers have a point, especially with Katrina? Yay or nay, Jonathan Gillian?
I think staffers always have their opinion, but I think Mr. Zucker is an incredible leader, and I've told him that to his face before. I think the way he runs that operation, he is in charge, and I think he has a good handle on the day-to-day operations of that.
You don't happen to ever work at CNN, do you?
I'm on there a few times.
Yeah, I seem to recall something like that. How much do you get paid for that? Who am I to judge? We've been doing a fair amount of Trump coverage ourselves. So
Zucker was correct in that coverage, in this sense. Katrina happened 10 years ago. It's taped. Donald Trump, it's live, it's recent, it's relevant, it's what people care about more right now. It's the right programming decision. The New York Times is coming under fire from some Jewish groups after the paper published a list tracking which Democratic senators and House members were for or against the deal, and whether or not those congressmen were Jewish or not. Not kidding. Take a look at the chart. Yep, and it really includes the question Jewish next to senators like Chuck Schumer. Pathetic on New York Times' part, I think we could all agree, and they took it out of the story but never issued a correction.
Yeah, really bad idea.
I think it's a bad idea.
Indeed. Okay, finally. The 50th season of the NFL, we promised you, kicked off last night with the Patriots stopping the Steelers 28-21. And with Deflategate behind us, there's now something else that's entering into the Patriots lore. Headset Gate. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin said he and other Steelers coaches could hear the Patriots radio feed in their headsets for most of the first half last night, making it very difficult for the Steelers to communicate with each other. Are the Patriots cheating again, Rick Unger?
Yes.
I don't care. Who cares?
Okay, who cares indeed. That's all for tonight. I'm Joe Concha. On behalf of our panel, Amy Holmes had to leave early. Jonathan, thank you so much. Mr. Unger, have a good weekend. You too. I thank you for joining us tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's next.